TFA fam, welcome into the week 3 rankings videos. Tonight we're going to hit on our top 36 wide receivers, talk about some of the guys outside of that. If you saw the running back video yet, it was a little bit gross. Weren't a lot of guys that we were really super excited about. It is the opposite for a receiver. There were so many guys we kept going back and forth on, asking, who do you have here? Where's he? Where's he? So wide receiver, a lot more exciting this week. Let's just dive right into it because, like I said, we have 36 names that we want to go over. So kicking off, Robby, first with you, your top 12 wide receiver rankings for week 3 are as follows. DeAndre Hopkins at 1, Keenan Allen at 2, Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill, Justin Jefferson, Stephon Diggs, DK Metcalf, Calvin Ridley, Tyler Lockett at 9, A-Rob, A.J. Brown, and then CeeDee Lamb at 12. For myself, a lot of similar names here, just on slightly different order. D-Hop for 1 for me as well. Devontae Adams at 2, Diggs at 3, Tyreek Hill at 4, Keenan at 5. I have CeeDee Lamb all the way up at 6. DK Metcalf, Calvin Ridley, Justin Jefferson, Tyler Lockett, A.J. Brown, and then I have Cooper Kupp at 12. So I really don't think there's a lot we have to, really dive into here with the top 12 guys. If you have any of these guys, you're plugging them in every week. But for you, Robby, for the top 12, are there any guys that you specifically wanted to hit on?
Whenever I reference a tweet, I feel like I need to do a much better job of remembering who tweeted it and give the credit to the person. But
Yeah,
somebody in the ether tweeted, this is not me, that basically DK Metcalf has had the exact same target share as Cooper Kupp. He just hasn't been getting the same yardage. Obviously, down the field, Tyler Lockett has just been dominating that and the touchdowns. But we know DK Metcalf is a touchdown guy. He absolutely will. If they don't score from 60 yards out with Freddie Swain or 48 yards out with Tyler Lockett, eventually they're going to get into the red zone. And what happens in the red zone is if they don't run it to Chris Carson, they're going to throw it to DK Metcalf. And I think he has not been this top 5, top 8 guy yet, but I do think that changes. Minnesota has been just horrendous so far. They have been giving up points through the air, points on the ground, points Oprah style. Who wants points? I'm giving you points. And I think that will come. This will be a DK Metcalf game, but I still like Tyler Lockett as well. Both are top 12 plays for me. So that's one guy I wanted to hit on. And then, CD, I have him at 12. You have him at 6. And I'm guessing we're thinking maybe Amari Cooper is at least limited, if not all the way out. If he is out, I might bump him up a couple spots. But right now, it's still kind of questionable. And I think the biggest thing where I might not get to where you're at is I do think Darius Slay maybe moves and follows Lamb a little bit more, because if now Cooper's out, we know Gallup's out, it's going to be Cedric Wilson. It might be Simi Fehoko or Noah Brown as that other wide receiver. So who is Dak going to most likely look to outside of the tight ends and running backs? It's probably going to be CeeDee Lamb. So I wouldn't be surprised if they move Darius Slay around with CeeDee Lamb, which doesn't shut him down by any means, but probably just limits maybe that top 5 upside that I would give him in a different week without Amari Cooper.
Yeah, that's precisely why I have him at 6, because we've seen this movie before. Robby, with you being the Cowboys fan, I'm sure you can remember back to 2 years ago where Cooper was banged up a bunch, kind of in and out. It was the year that Gallup kind of started to show, like, hey, he's actually a legit wide receiver. But they were willing to throw Cooper out there just kind of as a decoy, right? He just to be there to take take some of the pressure off the rest of the offense. And I think that we have seen this offense and the offensive coordinator be creative enough to where they might be able to get him away from Darius Slay, get him in the slot. Now, your 2 outside wide receivers aren't going to inspire a lot of confidence, but, being able to move CeeDee Lamb around, be able to hit him short, intermediate, long, he can do all that. So even if he is shadowed by Slay, he could be looking at 12, 13, 14 targets, in this game if Cooper is out. So I feel confident throwing him up there. For me, some of the guys to touch on quickly here, obviously your boy Keenan Allen, but going up against Kansas City should be a shootout, should see a ton of points. Kansas City's defense has really struggled. Obviously, we know what Mahomes on the other side can do. So really like Keenan Allen again this week. It feels stubborn at this point to not have Tyler Lockett ahead of DK Metcalf. Again, only 2 weeks in, but are we putting too much emphasis on last year? right? With how DK Metcalf just dominated through the first half of the year. Tyler Lockett just fell off a cliff. I have nothing to like really go off of other than like it, like in my gut. I just feel like this is going to be like the DK Metcalf game that we've been waiting for. And same thing with Calvin Ridley. Obviously, last week, got the touchdown. Was a top 16 wide receiver, I think, in PPR. Now going up against the Giants, we saw what McLaurin was able to do to that secondary last week. So Calvin Ridley, I think, is on that same echelon in terms of just overall talent, route running, explosiveness, that sort of thing. So I think Ridley, we finally see the game that a lot of us were expecting whenever we ranked him as a top 3, 4, 5 wide receiver. And the last guy I'll just touch on real quick, Cooper Kupp, been absolutely crushing it through the first 2 weeks. I think that continues even in a tough matchup against Tampa Bay. He's going to be operating out of the slot. He is obviously the apple of Matt Stafford's eye, so I think he continues that. And then A.J. Brown, I want to have him a little bit higher, but I feel like this could just be a Derrick Henry onslaught game, especially if Carson Wentz does not play. And I feel like if you have injuries to both ankles, you probably shouldn't play. So I think the A.J. Brown bounce back game is coming. I don't feel 100% confident that's going to be in week 3. Let's go ahead and dive into the wide receiver 2s here for the week. You have it as follows. Kicking things off, you have Cooper Kupp at 13, who we just talked about. DJ Moore, Adam Thielen, Courtland Sutton, Chris Godwin, Terry McLaurin, Amari Cooper, Sterling Shepard, Deontay Johnson, T. Higgins, Brandon Cooks, and then Deebo Samuel finishing out at 24. For myself, I have McLaurin at 13, A-Rob, Godwin, Thielen, DJ Moore, Mike Evans, Amari Cooper down at 19, Mike Williams up at 20, Deebo at 21, Julio, Bobby Trees at 23, and T. Higgins at 24. So we definitely have some different names here. Talk to me about some of these guys that you have in your wide receiver 2.
Yeah, I think the two big names that people will notice is Sterling Shepard on my side and Mike Williams on your side. And these are two guys that have absolutely exceeded our expectations so far. I'll let you talk about Mike Williams, but for Sterling Shepard, man, he's absolutely a different player this year than what we've seen in the past. His yards per target in the last 3 games, so this is the 2 for this year and his last game in 2020, is like an extremely healthy 11 yards per target. And just for like a reference, his career average is 7.4 yards per target. If we go back to 2020, the only wide receivers with a better than 11 yards per target average is Julio Jones, Justin Jefferson, Will Fuller, and then Rashard Higgins. So like, sure, Rashard Higgins one name, but the rest of those guys are down the field type of guys, really elite wide receivers. He's been playing lights out. He's separating. And then on the flip side, Daniel Jones, who we talked about in the quarterback video, I have him as a top 12 quarterback this week. He's been playing a lot better, a lot more accurate than we've seen him be in the past, throwing the ball down the field with accuracy. So he cracks my top 20 just because it's hard to doubt that after 2 weeks. And just, I get it, it's 2 weeks. I'm trying not to overreact, but I've just seen it. And then we have the Falcons secondary. And you noted in the quarterback's video as well that their top corner could be out as well. So I think we're just looking at a fantastic matchup for Shepard, who has been the as you say, the apple of the quarterback's eye there. So yeah, really like him. And then just some of these other names. A lot of these guys can be interchanged because they're touchdown guys, right? Adam Thielen, Courtland Sutton, Terry McLaurin. Amari Cooper, we have to see where he's going to fall on the injury report. How does he practice throughout the week? I'm not sure if he'll play, but we'll get more information on that as the week goes on. But then T. Higgins down there at 22. The only reason he's not a little bit higher is because they have the 3 mouths to feed, and the Bengals have not been throwing as much as we expected. The Pittsburgh matchup, name only, should be pretty tough. You've noted some of their injuries that they do have to the defense, so we can see about that. But then Brandon Cooks and Deebo Samuel both have been on fire. Really hard to keep them out of your top 24 at this point. So they round out my top 24.
Yeah, I actually have Shepard just outside. He's been playing really well. Just Mike Williams, I'll throw this out really quickly. I had him, I think, up at like 15 or 16 last week, and it was kind of like, hey, that's a little spicy. It's kind of crazy. And apparently, I wasn't high enough on him. He finished above that. I think he was a wide receiver 1. last week. But through the first 2 weeks, you look at someone who has 22 targets, 15 catches, 173 yards, and a touchdown in each of those weeks. So who knew that all you needed was a second-year quarterback and double-digit targets, and now all of a sudden you're a really good fantasy asset? Who would have thought? And obviously being able to stay healthy as well for Mike Williams. But like we talked about with Keenan Allen, this matchup with KC. Casey's defense really struggling, can't really seem to stop much of anything, whether you want to do it through the air or on the ground. So, I'm not sure what the total is for this game, but I got to imagine it's one of the highest over-unders on the week. So I can't imagine the spread is all that wide either. So really looking forward to that matchup. DJ Moore, having him at 17, like he was someone who, you were talking about wanting to interchange a lot of these names. I feel like I could have him a little bit higher, but this also just feels like, just one of those like gross Thursday night games where like the Panthers like barely squeak out a win, even though it's Davis Mills and the Texans. Like it just feels like that could be like one of those just like gross games. Again, like nothing concrete to act on, no, stats that are researched with that one. Just kind of like
a normal Thursday night game, except for we've had two fantastic Thursday night games, but you're describing normal Thursday night games.
Yeah, we'll go with that. And then outside of that, I thought we were going to see Ayuk be a little bit more involved this week. He was not. So as of right now, as we sit through 2 weeks, seems like it's this passing offense is going to run through Debo. Like I don't know what in the hell they're doing with George Kittle. It makes no sense to me. But it looks like Debo is going to be the guy, and as long as he's healthy, it is going to be interesting to see how much they can keep him away from Jair. If they can get him matched up on Kevin King, we probably need to have Debo in the top 12 again, right? Because we saw Kevin King just get torched play after play, even going all the way back to last year, and he's just been continuing with that this year. Robert Woods is someone who I would also like to have higher. It was nice to see him get a little bit more involved this last week. After only seeing 4 targets week 1, did see 9, went 5 for 64 in week 2. So it was nice to see him get more involved. And again, matchup with Tampa Bay, should see a decent pace, a decent amount of points scored. So that's kind of where I'm sitting with those guys. Anybody else in the wide receiver 2s that you want to touch on?
No, let's move to the wide receiver 3s.
Your wide receiver 3s, you have Julio 25, followed by Devonta Smith, Mike Williams, Antonio Brown, Robert Woods, Chase Claypool, Mike Evans, Kenny Golladay, Jamar Chase, Marvin Jones, Marquise Brown, and Juju Smith-Schuster. I have Sutton at 25, Shepard at 26, Deontay Johnson down at 27, AB, Jamar Chase, Devonta Smith, Brandon Cooks, Juju Smith-Schuster, Marquise Brown, Kenny Golladay, Tyler Boyd, and then Marvin Jones. Now, this was a range for me where, like, I honestly feel like I could take all those names, throw them in a hat, and then just, like, do my order that way. Like a lot of these guys, I want to move up, but then I'm like, well, what about this? What about that? So did you feel the same way with your wide receiver 3s, and who are some of the guys that you're looking forward to in week 3?
If we get a lot of questions tomorrow and Sunday about why we have some of these wide receivers that we're not picking over the wide receiver 2s, it honestly comes down to their target share and their volume, right? Like all of these guys have had a game with good target share, and then they've had a game where you've seen them be a lower end, wide receiver 3 or even beyond that, right? You hit on Robert Woods already. Mike Evans, we've seen one game fantastic, one game lower. Kenny Golladay still hasn't broken out, but I like his matchup. I have Daniel Jones as a top 12 guy, so I have him up here, but there's volume concerns. Chase Claypool, 9 targets last game, only caught 3 of them. Him and Ben just can't connect. So volume concerns there. AE, same thing. I'm really the only guy, and you talked about it, how we were too low on him, and even you who had him really high. Mike Williams might be the only guy in this range that does not have volume concerns right now. Devonta Smith, even though his target share was at 30% in week 2, they just don't throw the football as much as some of these other teams. Jamar Chase, another name, Marquise Brown. So this is what I would classify as maybe outside of Mike Williams for me, the volume is questionable in a week to week. They can have wide receiver 1 weeks, and that's why you want to push them up. They can also have, 4 or 5 targets and be duds for you. So that's without going into anybody in specific, that's kind of why I have these guys here.
There's definitely names to be excited about too. Like Marvin Jones has been a really pleasant surprise here through the first couple of weeks. And, depending on what happens with Laviska Shenault, I was a little hesitant on DJ Chark last week after seeing 12 targets, but I didn't see it going the way that it did with him following up his 12 target performance week 1 with 4 targets in week 2. And that was with Laviska leaving the game in the second half, I believe, at some point. But Marvin Jones has just been that steady guy for this offense. 9 targets week 1, 11 targets week 2, a touchdown in both weeks, went 5 for 77 week 1, 6 for 55 week 2. So he's someone who I feel like I could possibly bump up in this matchup with Arizona. Obviously Arizona is going to force Jacksonville to be in a pass-heavy game script early on. So I want to put him up a little bit higher. There's just guys that I can't, like Kenny Golladay at 34. I want to see that connect before I move him up. It was really close to happening this past game. Did have, I think, 8 targets last week. Only caught 3 of them. So this could be one of those ones where we look back next week and it's like, oh yeah, you were way too low on him. But like I said, I just want to see it happen first. And then, even looking at this now, I want to go back and rewind 5 minutes ago and put Devonta Smith a little bit higher because he is the clear number 1 target in that offense. And this matchup, again, going up against Dallas, should see Philly be forced to pass a little bit more than what they might want to do in a perfect game script for them. So is there anybody in your wide receiver 3s you didn't get to touch on yet that you want to touch on? And if you don't, just some guys after that who you are excited about in week 3.
Yeah, I think really quickly, just kind of hitting back on Kenny Golladay because I kind of brushed over it, right? He's a guy that really could have had a better game against the football team on Thursday Night Football. He had a pass interference called on him when he was probably going to catch a touchdown from Daniel Jones. He dropped 2 passes, which I don't think is going to stay the rest of the season. So even though it wasn't the best stat line, 3 for 38, the target share was there. I do think Daniel Jones is playing better. The matchup is good. And I just think this is going to be the squeaky wheel game. Like we saw Kenny Golladay a little bit frustrated on the sideline. I feel like whenever they've shown that on TV, what happens the very next week? That guy just gets peppered with targets. So this really just feels like a Kenny Golladay. If I had more I don't know, if I could push him up higher, but I'm kind of with you where I want to see it first. I do have him as a top 32-ish wide receiver. So I'm really like that. Marquise Brown, I guess, would be the other name that I just want to throw out there. I haven't been high enough on him. He's had a bigger role than I thought, and it's kind of come to the detriment of Mark Andrews. I do think Mark Andrews has a really good game this week, but I don't know if that takes away from Marquise Brown. I think it might take away from Sammy Watkins a little bit. He's just been really fantastic, catching 6 passes for 113 yards and a touchdown last week. He's getting the volume, even though they don't pass a ton. They threw the ball 30 times last week. I don't know if they get quite to that number against the Lions, but his ability to beat this Lions secondary and score a deep touchdown should be very high. So very excited about Marquise Brown. Other than that, I think some names to watch. I'm starting them situationally, if that makes sense. If the situation is right and you don't have the other flex options, Rondale Moore, he caught 7 of 8 targets. He had 114 yards and a score. We have to note that he had a 77-yard touchdown where that was blown coverage, so you're not going to get that every week. But a 22% target share in a team that's going to throw just a lot based on their offense, they're going to run a lot of plays. You should see him and Kirk kind of battle back and forth for who's going to get more targets, and they both should see 5 to 7 targets, 8 targets this week. So he should have a decent target share with his ability after the catch to make some moves. Make some things happen. So the other guy would be Quintez Cephas, who with Tyrell Williams being out, he's kind of stepped into that wide receiver 1 role. I know that you've been a big Amon-Ra St. Brown guy, and he can be good as well, but I think it might take a little bit of time. Right now, Quintez Cephas is doing well. He had 7 targets, 4 for 63 and a touchdown last week. So he's a guy that you should keep on your radar. I don't know if I'm starting him. It's kind of in a situation where the Lions are going to have to throw to keep up. Can he do it again? Maybe. But those are some guys that I think are flex worthy in a pinch.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up Rondale Moore because I was going to talk about him if you didn't. And the only other thing that I'll throw in here quickly is he had 8 targets while only playing 46% of the snaps, which is just kind of crazy to think about that. Like, we haven't even seen him in like a full complement of snaps yet. So obviously that's not going to double if he goes up. He's not going to be seeing 16 targets if he plays 90% of the snaps, but I think that might be something where, as we see his involvement grow, we can kind of count on these, 6, 7, 8 target kind of games, and not just be these one-offs. And I'm glad to see that he has played as well as he has through the first 2 weeks after just being shit on for no reason. Let's be honest, because he was 5'7" instead of 5'9". Like that, like. I'm glad that he's balling out the way that he is. Outside of that, Robby Anderson, somebody that we talked about pre-show, we both have him outside the top 36. But if this is the game where he does end up having a 2020 Robby Anderson week, we're not going to be surprised. I think in this matchup, you can play him if you need him in a flex spot, or if you're looking at your opponent and you feel like you kind of need that boom bust. It's not something I would typically look out and want to do on a Thursday night game, but he obviously does offer that boom potential, but obviously also has a pretty low floor as well. Another guy who you shouldn't be chasing his points is Michael Pittman. It was good to see the week that he had 12 targets, went 8 for 123. But as I mentioned with the Carson Wentz deal, that's just something where I'm not plugging him in. If you absolutely had to, the matchup against Tennessee doesn't bother me. And if you were following along with our training camp tweets at FF_authority, you noticed whenever Wentz went out, whenever he had his first ankle injury, that they were throwing in obviously these backups, and it seemed like Pittman was always a mainstay. He was always one of the names who was coming in saying, oh, he still has his rapport, whether it was Ellinger or Eason. So I wouldn't be going out of my way to play him, just based off what he did last week. But the matchup against Tennessee, it isn't, something I would necessarily avoid. But if you have to play Pittman for whatever reason this week, I think you can do so and not feel awful about it, even if it is Eason behind center. That is going to wrap things up for the week 3 wide receiver rankings. Any start sit questions you have, any waiver questions, anything like that, drop them in the video below, or you can join the Discord. That link is below as well. Absolutely free, no strings attached, anything like that. So you can jump in there and ask all your questions. You're going to have a bunch of people chiming in. The Discord has been popping off over the past couple of weeks. It's been really fun to watch that grow. So please hit us with a subscribe if you're not subscribed yet. Give us a like, and we will see all of you on the next one.